Hello, thank you for joining us at the 8th Annual SACS Immuno-Oncology Innovation Forum. I'm Brad Loncar. I'm co-chair of our China Partnering and Investment Panel. And, I'd like to thank the SACS conference for hosting this. I've actually attended many years, both in person before COVID and now virtually. And I hope we get a chance to start going back to Chicago and doing this live. But we've been doing this China panel for a handful of years now, and it's fun to kind of use this as a benchmark and to see the growth of China biotech and pharmaceuticals and immuno-oncology and see how it grows and evolves and changes over time. So I'm looking forward. We've got a great panel of experts joining us today who are at the heart of business development and legal and just all aspects of what's going on cross-border between China, the United States, and Europe. So it should be a great discussion. So I'm a biotech investor. I focus on a lot of things. I've been interested in China for a handful of years, and I actually created a fund that trades on the NASDAQ that focuses on China biotech. So it's been a pleasure for me to get to know the region and visit companies and just to witness that growth. So with that, we're going to start with introducing ourselves. I'll kick it over to my co-chair, Ji Liu from Torreya. Ji?
Great. Thank you, Brett. It's nice to see all the panel. So it's great to join the panel discussion. So Jay Liu, Managing Director at Torreya Capital. I've been with the firm for over 5 years. So Torreya, as you may know, we're a boutique investment bank. We have about 50 people, 25 in New York, 10 in Europe, and Japan, India, where we have the generic practice. So my responsibility at Torreya, I head up China practice. So in the past 5 years, we've done over 20 transactions related to China. Predominantly, it's into China, and the deal structures are mainly licensing. We've also done JV and equity investment. We can talk later as we have seen more transactions coming out of China. So it's good to meet everyone, and hopefully we have a very good panel discussion.
Great. And with that, let's go around the table. Angus Grant from BeiGene, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks. So Angus Grant, I'm the Chief Business Executive at BeiGene, and I'm responsible for the functions that cover strategy through partnering. And so kind of an end-to-end organization for identifying sort of where we're going with our corporate strategy, with our portfolio, and giving us guidance what to bring into the portfolio. And then I have a team that focus on the search and evaluation of the transactions, and then the alliance management on the back end to make sure that we support the deals we create within BD. If some know, but for those who don't, BeiGene is a relatively young company, 11 and a half years old. Was really founded on its research labs that are based in Beijing and Shanghai. And those labs were highly productive. And I have a little bit of a sort of history with them. I was at Celgene for 12 years before joining BeiGene and did the deal between Celgene and BeiGene in 2017. So got to know a little bit about the company back then and was really quite impressed with the pipeline. And so now I've joined the company and I've got to see what is coming out of that pipeline. So in addition to the labs, BeiGene has built a very strong internal clinical development program so that it can develop its own compounds with less dependency on CROs. And now has built out a very large sales force in China, over 3,000 sales reps in China, but has also been building out the US and Europe. In fact, I just got back from Europe from the launch of our sales force in Europe and of our new European headquarters in Basel. And in addition to that, BeiGene has built manufacturing capabilities. So in a fairly short 11 and a half years, there's now over 8,000 employees and can do everything from discovery to commercialization and manufacturing of its own products. But also, as we'll talk about today, is fairly active in business development, bringing in additional assets for the portfolio.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Portia Ku from O'Melveny and Myers. Portia?
Hi. Nice to meet you all. I'm Portia, a senior partner of Armani Myers based in New York. Before my relocation to New York office, I've been working in our Hong Kong office, Shanghai office for 7 years, and also Silicon Valley office for about 9 years. What we have been primarily focusing on is the global healthcare and life science companies that have either China operations or China management. So as you can imagine that the real US biotech companies, IPOs, are not really starting until probably BeiGene is the real innovative biotech company coming to the US. And then that kind of has come to not very prosperous start until probably 2020. And then we had 4 deals in the market and 3 deals in 2021. And then, but since the Chapter 18 of Hong Kong IPO market started, we have been very active. I think we have participated at least 1/3 of biotech deals coming going public in Hong Kong, which including Hua Medicine, even Pharma rounds, dual listing in Hong Kong, and BRI, which is based in US. So I'm very happy to be on this panel to see whether we can brainstorm good ideas about the future.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mark Wiggins from Tracon. Mark, you're on mute.
There you go. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, it's great to be here. And yeah, let me first start by saying thank you to Brad and G for inviting me to participate in this exciting panel. My background is in business development as well as product commercialization. So I've been the head of BD for several biotech companies and was the head of US business development for Schering-Plough for the past 4 years. And currently I'm the chief business officer at Tracon Pharmaceuticals based in San Diego. And most relevantly for today's panel topic, at Treycon, I'm leveraging our rare capability to conduct clinical trials without using a CRO. And so we use this to help leverage and in-license innovative products from Chinese biotechs. So Treycon's ability to run these trials at a fraction of the cost gets passed on to our corporate partners, and we pay for all of the clinical trials and conduct the clinical trials for our partners, including through to approval. And we also hold the rights to commercialize the products. And I've closed 4 such collaborations with Chinese biotechs over the past 4 years. So that's how we're building our internal pipeline without an R&D group. And then prior to Tracon, for 6 years, I worked at BeiGene as Executive VP of Corporate and Business Development. And there we closed a lot of deals as a result of a late-stage blockbuster product setback. Before that, I was at IDEC Pharmaceuticals for 5 years, and I ran marketing, including the launch of Rituxan with our corporate partner Genentech, and I was head of BD. And prior to that, I spent 15 years with big pharmaceutical companies, Schering-Plough, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer. And there I worked in both marketing research and business development. And just recently, I was on the board of Zogenix for 11 years, and they were acquired by UCB for $1.4 billion this year. I've got a BS from Syracuse University and an MBA from the University of Arizona. Thanks again for including me in the panel today.
Thanks, Mark. Next, we'll go to Luzon from Union Healthcare.
Hi, Brad and Jill. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to this panel. It's really an honor for me. My background is relatively simple compared to you guys with so many years of industrial experience. So actually, I had my PhD in the US from University of Kansas Medical Center with a major in pharmacology. Then I moved to Rutgers University with my PhD mentor to continue my PhD training. Then I did a few years of postdoc training in the Rutgers Cancer Institute with Dr. Eileen White, who recently got elected to the National Academy of Science, which is really a big thing for the lab and actually for the, I guess, for the entire Rutgers research community. And it's also, I feel very honored to work, to be able to work with her for a couple of years under her, supervision. Then I joined the Union Healthcare Venture in the early 2019 with this early, when the fund was actually just initiated. And our fund is a relatively new fund, in the field, but we are kind of special as our cornerstone investors are two of the largest, pharmaceutical companies. Among the largest in China, Jiangsu Hengrui Medicine and Yunnan Baiyao. Hengrui is specialized in, innovative drugs, and Baiyao is specialized in traditional Chinese medicine. So we hope to bring synergy to our, investors. So far, we have raised about 1.3 billion renminbi under investment. So it's relatively small funds as for now, but we have been very active in the past few years. So our fund mainly focuses on, I would say, two large areas. One side is pharmaceuticals, biologics. The other team focus on diagnostic medical device. So far we have invested about more than 20 investments, I believe, and 2022 is very special year for Shanghai, because we are in the middle of lockdown. I hope we are approaching to the end of it, because just this week I went to the supermarket twice, so it's really exciting this week. And in terms of the investment activity, we are still actively talking to projects over the internet, thanks to software like Zoom and the Tencent meeting. But somehow I think the overall activity in China has been slowing down. That's the feeling everybody is talking about. And so far for the companies we are in the process of investing, or we just recently signed. Mostly we got in touch with them before the lockdown, or even the year before, or in 2020. So for initiating new projects is really it's not a good time for now. So that I would say that's the reality for now, because we are locked in our home, and we can't really pay a visit to talk to the CEOs face to face. It's kind of hard to build up the relationship and to make to progress with the investment process. So yeah,
well, great.
And yeah.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear that you're able to, things are opening up a little bit and you're able to go to the store. Hopefully that's a good sign of the months to come. Well, thank you. So next we'll go to Zhan Adamou from CSPC Pharmaceuticals. Zhan?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brad and G, for inviting me to this panel. I'm Zhan Adamou. I'm Chief Business Officer of CSPC Pharmaceutical Group. I joined the company about 8 months ago. I'm located in the U.S. in the East Coast. I have responsibility of business development, and it includes search and evaluation, transactions, and alliance management across the various therapeutic areas that CSPC focuses on. When you look at my background, it kind of divides into two areas. The first started off as a bench scientist in research and development for the first 10 years, and then transitioned over the last 20 years in a BD function. So from a research perspective, I started my career in Canada at Elitix Pharmaceuticals, and then moved to Pennsylvania and joined SmithKline Beecham Molecular Biology Department. and then transitioned into BD at MedImmune in Gaithersburg. I then joined a large pharmaceutical company, Boehringer Ingelheim, for 14 years. I headed their business development function out of the US that focused across all therapeutic areas, both in licensing and out licensing. And then after 14 years, I joined BeiGene for 3 years and focused on a number of deals, regional China deals for BeiGene. And then I joined recently CSPC at the same type of responsibility. It's just a little bit of background on CSPC is one of the leading innovative pharmaceutical companies in China. It has fully integrated capabilities from R&D, manufacturing, and commercialization. It has a long history. It was founded in 1938, listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange since 1994, and we're headquartered in Shanghai. When you look at the scale of the company, it's quite large. We have more than 23,000 employees, 2,000 in R&D and regulatory, and we have a pretty impressive commercial infrastructure. We have 10,000 sales reps in China across multiple therapeutic areas, and we have 11 manufacturing sites in China that cover both small molecules as well as biologics. Our pipeline is quite deep. We have more than 100 innovative programs across 6 therapeutic areas. Our core therapeutic areas are CNS and oncology. We also have a focus in autoimmune, metabolism, cardiovascular, and infectious diseases. From a financial standpoint, we generated at the end of 2021, $4.4 billion in revenue, which was an increase of about 11% over 2020. We're very much focused in Greater China region, and we're looking for innovative products to bring to patients in China, and regional deals is certainly a focus for CSPC.
All right. Well, thank you for all those great introductions. So let's get into the discussion. We're going to talk in detail about east to west and west to east partnering, but for our first topic of discussion, we wanted to ask you all, and we'll open this up for everyone, so please don't be shy. We'd like to kind of get a finger on the pulse of what trends have been in partnering over the last few years. Like, how is partnering different today than maybe it was a few years ago? Like, what are things that are in focus right now? Maybe I'll kick it over to my co-chair, G, who is very active in cross-border deals to comment on this and to open it up for a broader discussion amongst the panel.
Sure, I'll do a very quick, and then would love to hear the other panelists' thoughts. So, I mean, I've been with Torreya for 5 years, and 5 years we've seen tremendous evolutions and changes. One is, you know, when I first started, it was very much a one-way street licensing into China, innovation, late stage, right? But now in a couple of years, and we've seen number-wise, you know, numbers in the triple digits. For instance, last year, over 100 transactions into China in licensing is a big increase from the year before. In the past 2 years, we've seen reverse of China opportunities going to the US, and we've seen over 40 transactions, and that's almost double the year before. So from that perspective, I think China is benefiting from the world, but also and vice versa. Certainly, investment capital market is not doing well, IPO, but I hope, you know, it's a hiccup and things will go much better next year.
All right, and who else would like to take that? Just kind of at a very high level, you know, are you seeing the same? Are you feeling the same thing? Like, do you see that shift from, you know, west to China now kind of going the opposite direction? Who would like to take that?
I think one of the things that is foundational to what we're probably all going to talk about, and that is the regulatory changes in China. China joining the International Conference on Harmonization has been I think a really important sort of change in the landscape in China. The drugs that are developed for the CDE in China by Chinese companies are now following the same sort of drug development paradigms that we use in the US and Europe and Japan. And so I think that has sort of opened the stage for biotechs in China to be on the global stage. And that's been a very, very rapid change. I mean, we sort of talk about a 5-year time span. So I think that's just put that on the table, because I think we'll all talk to the impact that has had in out-licensing things from China to US companies or European companies, and vice versa, bringing things in from US and European companies into China because they're working with a common regulatory platform.
Speaking of that, Angus, I have a follow-up question for you. So, BeiGene struck a very big partnership a couple years ago with Amgen. Amgen actually owns, I think, 20% of BeiGene today. And one major component of that partnership is exactly what you're talking about. BeiGene is helping Amgen develop its oncology drugs throughout the world, and being all on the same ICH, playbook, I think is something that really makes a partnership like that work. I'm wondering, do you think that you'll see a lot more of those things where China companies are helping Western firms be a key component of their global studies going forward? Is that like a partnership opportunity for more firms in the future, do you think?
Absolutely. And actually, John Adamou did some of those deals. So he was there before my time at BeiGene. But absolutely, when the regulatory landscapes are the same, when sort of the ICH sort of guidance is the same for good clinical practices, then you can run global trials where you're enrolling patients from every territory. And that makes I used to be a regulator at one point, that makes your life as a company going in front of all the regulatory agencies much easier. So I think that really does help. And I think that allows, companies like BeiGene to partner with other companies and contribute patients from China into the global clinical trials. I think we saw a pretty sort of interesting case recently where a trial was taken to the FDA that was not intended to be a global clinical trial. And so I think that's really the important point, is before you initiate a global trial, do you have a plan, and are you conducting it in a way that's going to satisfy multiple regulatory agencies?
John, Angus gave you a shout out. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Angus. I mean, I think the Amgen BeiGene deal is a unique deal, very transformative deal that was done at the time. Of course, trying to replicate that type of deal has its own challenges, right? I think you need a very close alignment on both companies at a very high level to do a deal similar to that, where it encompasses really an entire pipeline. And of course, we're always trying to leverage the capabilities certainly at CSPC, given the scale that it has to replicate that. But that alignment becomes really a challenge. And I think we have to recognize that it may be a unique deal at the right time that deal was done. And I think if it gets replicated, everything has to align again between the two parties. But, going back to G's opening statement, I mean, the two ecosystems that exist in the industry right now, China to global, where China, based companies are out licensing to global players, to access these global markets and commercial capabilities outside of China, is really taking a lot of headwind here to move forward. There's a lot of assets that are in China. They're competing with US-based innovation as well. But that's certainly a very aligned deal structure. Global to China, where China-based companies such as CSPC and BeiGene and others are leveraging assets from the West to bring into China patients because of the scale they have developed over the years, have really a competitive advantage, right? And I think you're seeing a tremendous amount of increase in the number of deals. And like G has noted, there are more than 140 to 150 deals that were done in 2020 and 2021. 5 years ago, before that, there were half. There were only 60 deals done. So you see a tremendous push towards the China regional deals. And for CSPC, we stay very focused on these types of deals in the future, in particular in oncology and CNS fields.
All right, Mark, I saw you raise your hand. You've been a very active deal maker. What are some of the trends that you've been noticing lately?
Well, thanks, Brad. I just changing the topic a little bit. I was just going to say that, what we've noticed, or I've noticed, is that just talking about that time frame that Angus was suggesting earlier, a 5-year time frame. It's been an amazing change in terms of how fast China can move. And some of my partners refer to their capabilities as China fast, and they're not wrong. And in just those 5 years that I've only been involved with this for 4, the stage of the products that are available for coming from China into the West, or to North America in particular, are so much more advanced. And I think the quality of the packages that some of the partners we talk to have for submitting an IND in the U.S. is remarkably impressive. But that's also been in sync with the ability for some of our partners to get NASDAQ listed and have tremendous access to capital. And of course, the last 4 years were quite different than the last, less than a year today on the capital markets. But they have some nice capital war chests. And I think that they've just been able to make progress in companies in China at a speed of probably 2x what happens traditionally in the United States. So, and then I'm seeing better and better targets. The Chinese biotech companies are going after targets that are more interesting to US-based potential corporate partners. And I'll stay with you, Mark. What type of, you mentioned targets and interesting targets, like what type of innovation is available in China today? Like what are you seeing in whether it's indications, whether it's certain technologies, like what are the things that really pique your interest as a deal maker today? Well, thanks for asking me to elaborate on that target comment. So I'm not saying that these are first-in-class assets for the majority of the ones we look at, but they are extremely fast followers. And not uncommonly, the products we see being proposed have the promise of being best in class. And I'm talking at Tracon, we primarily are focused on oncology, although we're interested in any specialty physician targeted product because we can mount a sales force to sell that. We wouldn't go head to head with any primary care GP FPIM product as a small pharma company in the U.S. But they're just getting better and better, and that's a trend that I think will continue. Okay, Lou from Union, we'll go back to you. In your opening remarks, you kind of hit on a trend. You said that investing within China was really slowing down with the lockdowns. Just wondering if you can expand a little more on that, and what does that mean for someone like you? Like, what are you, if China is slowing down, what is your focus today?
Right. I would say read more papers, do more research, prepare for the market to come back. Well, I think it's a mixture of catalyst. It's not just the lockdown. It's the the U.S.-China relationship and the regulatory change, right? And we see the PD-1 from Xinda didn't make it through. Personally, I don't think it's gonna make it, but somehow it will influence the investors, the CEOs from the biotech companies. So it's very influential. See events like this, and there are also very good catalysts such as the HER2 ADC from BeiGene was out licensed, and it's a huge deal. So definitely with all these things going on globally, not just in China but also in US, in the Europe, everywhere. So I guess you guys know what I mean when I say Europe. So people, I mean, the field is a little bit downside now, but we're waiting for the things to get better. So right now we still heavily invest very good teams, but one trend we have been observing is that the funds in China are more and more we focus on early stage biotechs, which focus on first-in-class, potentials, like Mark has mentioned before, as you guys see in the BD deals, and we don't much like follows, as it gets so crowded in China, and we want to see differentiation ability, right? So even in a crowded field such as HER2 ADC, but if you can make a different angle in indications in the therapeutic areas, that's also good. So we focus more and more on the ability of the the founders of the team to be able to make that progress. And economic impact definitely will affect our field, because you guys may know or may not, so many VC funds in China are based by government funding. So if the government has less money to pour into the market, then the investor will become more cautious and more selective. So we have seen, so in terms of the deals, so one of our portfolio, so not to mention the name of the company, actually the founders of the companies has very strong industrial background, and they have very good assets. One of them is already applied for NDA in China, but somehow because of the model of licensing, the Hong Kong stock market doesn't like it much anymore. And for A share, you can send a company to IPO based on in licensing. It's not going to work. So investors are becoming very, very cautious in those kind of deals now. And what we want to see more is out licensing, the ability to make out licensing deals with multinational corporations. Is really a great proof of the team and the assets. So we also try to help our portfolio companies to out-license their products. So it's definitely a lot of change going on in China, not just fast. The change also fast.
Yeah, thank you. I think bringing up that RemeGen Xiagen partnership is a great example of the quality of work that's coming out of China. Xiagen has been the world leader in antibody drug conjugates for decades, and to in-license one from anybody really says a lot. And that they licensed one from a Chinese company says is a great sign of quality from RemeGen and other companies working on ADCs in China. So Portia, he mentioned something that we're all dealing with every single day, the regulatory and geopolitical challenges and how investors and companies, try to navigate that. You really live this every single day. What are some of the trends that you're seeing? And if you have any predictions on where, any of those things are going, I think all our panelists would love to hear it.
I'm an eternal optimist because probably I've been through 3 cycles in the past 25 years over capital markets. The only thing I'm bullish is that we still have a lot of liquidity. So that's the premise. But I do have to echo what Jie is saying, that in the past 2 years or 3 years, that the in-license, out-license deal has really, for example, in the numbers in 2021 has doubled than 2020. I think that partially that has something to do with the well capitalization of those quote unquote private biotech company that can go public with billion-dollar valuation in Hong Kong, right? In addition to those traditional state-owned enterprise, that big pharmas, so the China R&D capabilities through well capitalization has been proven. So the out-license deal has been also increasing. But at this point, due to the tension between China and the US, I think the I would say well-funded biotech company has been running into challenges, because if your valuation is not really over 1.5 billion, then it's too small for Hong Kong. And then for the US, leaving aside whether US can legally block your deals, it just US ECM bankers and the bank as an institution are very concerned about the political risk and saying why we're doing these deals if all your operations are in China. SEC are very sensitive. I recently was doing a filing for one of the Chinese company. They not only are concerned about China exposure, they're even concerned about Hong Kong exposure and asking a lot of regulatory differences of clinical trial review process in Hong Kong as opposed to China. And they want to get to know more as well. So in a way that, but I'm still bullish in a way. First, the licensing deal itself is not covered by the CFIs squarely, right? So you could still do kind of in-license or out-license without being caught, without being concerned about CFIs, whether you need to go to get CFIs review. But for MMA process, certainly they're more sensitive foundational technology. We have to be more careful. But overall, for CROs or small molecule deals, drugs deals, we're still seeing very active trend to have a merger acquisition going on, because in a way you will see a lot of publicly traded biotech companies actually having a lot of cash on their balance sheet, but their trading value is way below their cash. So it presents opportunity for buying for a lot of greater global companies. So overall, I would think that if you ask me whether there's any prediction, first, I think that I can see China's CSRC has shown some sign of concession to cooperate on the PCAOB audit issue, which will resolve a lot of current issues that we sometimes have to find a co-sign audit partner of the big four in the US, right? Because if you only have China, US audit partner, that we can never really finish the audit in a way that could satisfy US standard. But I think that issue will likely be resolved by 2024. And in terms of investment, I do agree the closed deal number has decreased in the first quarter of 2022, but I do feel like people are patiently waiting to have a value buy or investment in the second half of the year. So I still think that 2023 might be good, and I do not know whether the market will really come back in the fourth quarter 2022, but a lot of people are actually waiting on the sideline. So I don't see a completely shut down.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. And, I would just say as an investor myself, I really hope the listing issue gets resolved, because the importance of that goes beyond the stock market.
Yes.
The just the relationship factor. It's important that China companies are well represented in the United States, and being on the stock exchanges is a way of doing that. And I think it's something that impacts all, facets of our business, partnering included. So I really hope it gets, resolved for many reasons. So I'm going to go back to my co-chair G. So, from hearing everybody speak, it seems clear that licensing into China seems to be slowing down a little bit. And a lot of Chinese companies and investors are focusing on trying to out-license, but surely there's a lot of good opportunities and unmet needs in China that China companies can help fulfill and partner with U.S. assets on. I'm wondering, in your experience, today, what are some of those unmet needs that are still out there? It feels like oncology, may be getting a little crowded. Like, are there other areas of medicine that companies are starting to focus on? Where's the shift for in-licensing going today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think oncology remains the number one choice for deal making. So over 40% of transactions are in oncology. I think to LeBron's point, I think people are shifting to early stage transactions in licensing. Other areas, I think orphan is one area we've seen a tremendous growth in terms of regulatory policies, incentives, and we recently heard the 7-year data exclusivity is in a draft format. So that could potentially accelerate the development, but also deal making in those areas. We've seen investors creating new companies in orphan. And I think the Hainan autonomous region and also the region across Hong Kong as the pilot zone will certainly help orphan products to go into China. So that's one area I think we're going to see. The other area we're going to see is the CNS area, cardiovascular. Those are the ones we've seen, and particularly talking to investors like, Union, we've seen the shift of funds going into those areas. And I think ophthalmology is certainly one area we've seen. So I think the shift will be more into the specialty, not GP, but specialty areas, and also moving towards early stage.
Zhan, CSPC is a huge company that focuses on a lot of things. Does that track with how you're feeling and what you're seeing today?
Yeah, I think it covered very well. I think for us, CNS has been a very core focus. We have 3,000 sales reps that are focused on CNS, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, certainly stroke, depression. All these are key focus for us. Oncology still remains the top priority, especially in solid tumors. Certainly, nephrology is another area that's underserved. IgAN is a particular. Ophthalmology is an expansion area for us. We're considering that area. It's underserved in China. So there's a number of areas that certainly we're focused on. But from an asset perspective, we still remain focused on clinical stage assets, where the commercial product is well established, because then we can certainly leverage our synergies in the development and commercialization to really maximize that value of the asset. So typically we'd like to come in prior to our partner initiates a phase 3 registrational trial. We'd like to be part of that global phase 3 trial, so we have a China inclusive trial. It's a much better way to accelerate the development when you have a partner such as CSPC on board. One of the things that's important to consider is that IP is important. A strong IP portfolio, a composition of matter patent is important in China. And therefore, it's important for these small companies to have filed across the major markets and certainly globally, but focus on China as well. And then one last thing, which I think is important, because the way that it's a sales volume based model in China. So when you look at margins, the cost of goods become a big driver. And therefore, it's essential for these companies to have optimized process so that we do the same business case as everybody else does in every other country, and we look at MPV, and the cost of goods and the margins are very sensitive in the China market, and therefore really the focus on small molecules becomes a little bit in focus because there's better process and maybe better cost of goods. But of course, we also look at biologics. So that overall, that's kind of the sentiment from a CSPC perspective.
Okay. Angus, I'm glad that John brought up IP and cost of goods, because we're at an immuno-oncology conference today. And there's a lot of companies out there that are watching this right now who are probably thinking to themselves, like, we know that China's a great potential market for our asset, but where do we even begin? How do we even initiate the partnering process? Sounds like John is saying, make sure you have your IP filed when you take that to partners. I'm wondering if you have any other advice for that type of person in the audience today who's, just getting started to thinking about doing business in China. What are some of those other checklist things that you like to see when companies come to you?
Well, I'm completely aligned with John on that one. I think it really is important. And if you've got a Chinese biotech who's developing a drug against a particular target, and you want to think about which markets do you want to take that drug into. And the same thing has been true for US biotechs and European biotechs and Japanese biotechs over the years, depending on their size and capability and their forward-looking vision. Are they planning on taking their drug to a worldwide audience? And if you are planning on taking it to a worldwide audience, you need to make sure you've got the IP that can give you the protection out there, because the buyer, many of us on this call today, the buyers, we're going to be looking for that freedom to operate. And it's not just composition of matter, but real FTO to be able to make, use, and sell that drug in disease of choice. And we've talked a fair amount about oncology today because that's one of the most active areas. And we all know IO and other parts of oncology, it's a combinatorial strategy. And so once you identify a company that's got an asset in China that you think you might want to license for China or for worldwide, IP is one of the most important considerations. And I think those of us who've been in this business for a while watched young US biotechs make that same mistake from time to time. They would sort of, in the early days, file sort of a limited IP collection of files. And then later on, they'd run into a multinational who wants to take it around the world, and they'd find out they missed a few countries. So these are sort of the lessons of an industry growing up. So that's one. And the other thing that I think is becoming more and more important is cost of goods manufacturing. Is what can you do about COGS? If you want to take drugs to multiple markets around the world, you need to look at your ability to manufacture it sometimes in multiple factories and multiple locations, but also to be able to manufacture it at a price that allows you to sell it at a price which is acceptable to the governments and to the payers. And so looking at cost of goods manufactured is also a really important attribute in early diligence.
Excellent, Mark. I'm going to ask you the same question, but maybe the opposite direction. I know we have a lot of China-based companies that are watching this that want to participate in all this, out licensing for the world that we've been talking about today. What is your checklist that you recommend when you meet with companies for the first time that they should be bringing to you?
It's actually the same.
It's universal BD.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the same checklist. You want to look at freedom to operate, intellectual property protection, cost of goods, quality of the clinical development package that either is in front of you or will be in front of you. Maybe the other thing I might add is you try to find companies that have what you perceive to be based on your experiences with them and their past behavior, a good cultural fit. That's also important because you're looking to enter into quite a long-term relationship on the corporate level.
And then Portia, we mentioned IP and making sure that's filed and everything. Anything else from a legal or regulatory standpoint that you get involved with at a very early stage with companies to help them do cross-border deals?
Actually, most of when we're discussing with the CEO and management about this strategic decision whether we need to in-license or out-license, particularly on out-licensing, some of the Chinese management will want to see whether they can split the territory, right? They want to keep the China themselves, and because they're not familiar with the U.S. European market, they're not sure about the clinical regulatory progress or process, so they think that they can split. But sometimes when we talk into global big pharma, they don't like the split story, right? They want to have the whole thing. I think that's the first thing first, that when they have to discuss, when they are discussing with their partner, they have to understand where this deal is going. Because usually the licensing deal without being due diligence by the other side for 6 months, you don't really know what they have in mind. So I think that's one of the things that we later figure out that probably doesn't fit with both parties, but both parties has spent significant amount of resources into the deal. I think that's something that maybe in the future the company can think about. Probably need to be fleshed out in an earlier stage. Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to ask a question that I think is not asked enough, and I'll open this for the entire panel. So don't be shy if anyone has some thoughts on this. You know, we talk a lot about the partnering process and you know what it takes to land a deal. But I'm wondering, like, after deals are made and the years after, what are some of the most important things that you all have seen to make sure that that partnership goes well and that drug gets developed well and is a success? Like, what are some of the success factors to make sure that that's a good relationship, after the dotted line is signed? And what are some of the cautionary tales, maybe some of the pitfalls that you've seen that have, have been bumps in the roads? Like, how do you make your partnership the biggest success? Mark, I see you kind of chuckling. Sounds like maybe you have something to say.
Well, I would just say that having been in a lot of these, and one of them that I was involved with was a commercialized product, and I was on the steering committee for that relationship for over a decade. And I think one of the good housekeeping lessons I learned from that situation was that, I think everyone on this panel will tell you that after a deal is completed at the first joint steering committee, both heads of BD that were part of the transaction go through the roles and responsibilities. But and that's great, and that's imperative, and because a lot of times the folks at the negotiation table know exactly what everyone's supposed to be doing to make it a success, and in conforming to what's required in the agreement. But in biotech companies, people change chairs, and so I find that a refresher of roles and responsibilities about every 2, you can even push it to 3 years, is very useful. And especially when you get into a 10-year-old relationship, there may be very few people involved with that product that were there at the beginning that really understand what's supposed to be happening from each side. And so I think that can lead to healthier long-term corporate partnerships than people start to otherwise interpret what they wish the agreement said.
Yeah. So Brad, right before I left Celgene, it was circumstantial, but we did a review of about 60 collaborations and relationships we'd set up over the previous sort of 8 years. And I was on a panel recently that had the same question. And it was interesting. It boiled down to fundamental human nature to make great partnerships. The first was, did you share a common vision and passion for what you were trying to accomplish in the collaboration? You both shared a desire to sort of drug a pathway, to work on a modality, to go after a disease. In the case of Mark's example, to expand commercial success together. Did you share that fundamental sort of common belief in why you were doing the collaboration, why you weren't doing it on your own, why you were working with someone? And then do you like the people you're working with? And because to Mark's point, I think it is important every few years to check in, to have a health check in a sense on a collaboration, to see if what you started is still in play. Because these things change. All of us that have been around the block in this, you've signed a deal, and a couple of years later, you've discovered, wow, that pathway didn't work, or we need to redo the molecule, or competitors came into play. Something always changes. It's a dynamic industry, and so if you share that common vision of what you're trying to accomplish together, and you like and trust and respect the people you're working with, you solve problems together. And really, to Mark's point, you will sit down 3 years later, and 6 years later, and 9 years later, and say, hey, we got to make some adjustments here. We love working with you. We share the same thing, but we better sort of just update some things. And then you get new people coming on board. You've got to sort of train the new people. But Mark, you said something I also really enjoyed doing is at the kickoff meeting, have the BD guys try to explain to everybody else what they just signed. Because it's sometimes in BD we get sort of into the contract, we get into the structure, and we're BD people, and we sort of say this will be great, and then you try to explain it to the project team who have to inherit it, and they're like, how did you do that? So that's the fun chore then of the handoff to the alliance management team. So there are just a few thoughts there, Brad.
Zhan, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty well covered, and I agree with both Brad and Angus. I think the first step is, it's not even after the deal is signed. Is there alignment between the parties, even during your first meeting, even before even non-confidential? The partnering process is a long one, right? It could be very long and very, and there's a lot of information exchange. So both parties are really aligning each other. Can we work with them? And can they work with us? All that is occurring during the partnering process. And it's important, at least for both sides, to have a good representation at high levels as well, so that key management and stakeholders are involved in the process very early on. It makes a big difference after the deal is done, where your key stakeholder already has input into the deal and into the process of why he wants to do this deal. So then, of course, do both parties share the same vision, as Angus noted? Do we share the same vision on the development strategy of the product? These deals are collaborative. When you're splitting out territories, it's a very collaborative. What happens in our territory impacts outside the territory. What they do in their territory impacts in our territory. So the framework is collaborative, and you need that alignment throughout the process and after the deal. I think one of the best things we do, and I think it's getting done even more so in the industry, is you bring alliance management in earlier, so they become familiar with the deal, they understand some of the nuances of the deal and where some of the key points were, so that gets carried through after the deal is signed. And I think that's another way to manage expectations as well.
All right. Well, look, this has been a great discussion. Time has really flown by. We only have a couple remaining minutes, so I just want to thank everybody. I know that I learned a lot from speaking with you, and I'll kick it over to G maybe for some closing thoughts. What are some of your main takeaways that from what you've heard today, and what are your expectations for the rest of the year? And close us out. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for the great panel. I mean, I'm very encouraged from what I heard. I think, to me, China obviously is the lockdown. I think it's going to disappear. And when we look back 2-3 years from now, I think we're going to see still China is going to be grow in different ways. I think one way we see is the coming out into the world. We've seen that from companies like CSPC, BeiGene establishing the US presence and European presence. We just heard Hengrui establish their ex-US. So I think China coming out is going to be great. Also, in-licensing is going to remain, because China does need innovations from the world to benefit the patient. So I'll stop here, and thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thanks to our
Thank you very much.
listeners.
Great panel.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.